Hello everyone, welcome back to my humble channel. It's great to have you all back as usual. Welcome to the new subscribers. I was saying last time I want to get over 200, and yeah, I got over 200, which is great. I'm not expecting a lot out of this channel. I just want to share my thoughts and hear some of yours about what's going on. Now, a lot has been going on as always since my last video. So my last video was probably about a week or two ago, and I've just been taking notes ever since. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about, the CORONA, or the COVID-19. I heard someone say something very interesting. They were arguing against it, of course, but they said something that stood out to me. They said, "Oh, you know, it's harmless." This is, by the way, the 7th CORONA virus that humans have had to deal with or have been discovered. And I went, oh, the 7th. I went, that's... And they're always talking about lately about crowning, and we know that CORONA means crown. And it was at the 7th. This is the 7th. And isn't that funny, because the dragon of Revelation has how many heads? 7. Could it be the completion of the dragon, of the dragon's fulfillment, the one that we can't see? Is there something going on there? It may be nothing, maybe something. The good old Pope. Now, I wasn't surprised when I saw this. I wasn't surprised at all. I know exactly what it's all about. He was in a mosque, and he was on his knees, and he was praying to Allah. Now, it doesn't surprise me. The reason is because there's even a building, I think, in The Hague, and it's called the Palace of Peace. This is the place where they're signing deals to make a one religion for the whole entire world. So it's the whole uniting everyone into the same mold thing to worship. It's not going to be a big collection, is it, in the future? It's going to be more one man that we should all worship, and it's going to be an image. I just think what the Pope is up to is sort of paving the way for that. I mean, it's quite obvious, isn't it? Baal. Now, we all know, not a good thing. Now, in the ancient, I'm not sure exactly when, but in the Jewish temple, they had been corrupted enough to allow a new worship to take place in the temple that was commanded to be built by God, the physical earthly temple. Now, in this temple, it was to worship the Father. They were convinced at one stage to allow Baal worship, and this was not only wrong, this was completely corrupting with abomination the temple of God. Now, what are we taught? What we are? The temple. Your body is a temple. We're the temple of God. We are the temple. Now, with Baal worship, very frowned upon by a lot of cultures, but some cultures embraced it. Sacrificing children, babies, the blood of innocence to appease that particular god. You needed the blood of innocence. Now, somebody pointed out and said, oh, you know what? It's going to happen again. And I'm like, how so? And they explained that with the VAX, I was reading an insert that someone had posted online, and some of the things in it, shocking, very shocking, not surprising, but still very shocking. Some of the things in there. Guess what's in it? Babies, unborn. Now that they are wishing to put that inside you, God's temple. So somebody explained it, and I said, that is true. They said, this is Baal worship all over again. I went, it's true, because you're putting sacrificed innocence into God's temple again. So horrifying, not surprising, but doesn't make it any less abominable. I'm going to use that word. I was looking at the makeup of the human body. I don't know why I just started doing it. I started looking up at what we're made up of in the scientific sense. And we had 3% nitrogen, 10% hydrogen, 65% oxygen, and 18% oxygen. Now, we know that carbon and oxygen are essential to life. There was a 4% remaining, and it just said others. I looked further into the others. It was stuff that we don't, some of that percentage we need, but some of it is stuff that's not meant to be in our bodies. Free radicals and, you name it, not meant to be in there. But also find it interesting when they're talking about global warming and saying, oh, we've got to get rid of carbon. Carbon's bad, but we're made up of 18% of it. And when they're talking about locking up carbon in the ground, I started to think about, isn't that what they basically want to do to us? Put us in the ground? And then, so they're not lying when they say we want to reduce carbon, we want to lock it up. I was listening to a debate about the pre-trib and the mid-trib and the post-trib, and every time I listen to a debate or an argument, I find the people who are expecting it to happen in the middle or at the end. The end is impossible, by the way. I don't want to go into it, but it's impossible. That the people who are mid and onward, they're very unreasonable when it comes to a real discussion. They're very unreasonable. They remind me of just like a really terrible politician who refuses to admit the truth, will always twist it or ignore the question and bring something else up, start attacking you. And but I was coming to the conclusion more and more that there really is a war. There's a war for us. Because I've been listening to that Ministry Revealed channel again. Elaine, his name is. I so respect him. I do. I respect him a lot. I've got a lot of respect for him because he's doing so much study. I mean, a Catholic priest could be taught, the entire Bible, but it could be wrong. He could be completely wrong all of his life and not even know it. Because he's like set in stone. No, that's the Bible. I know it. And that's it. Whereas you get great channels like Ministry Revealed or KJ is What Happened. That's a great channel. The only reason is because they understand the Bible, but they're keeping their eyes open at the same time. They're not just going, I understand the Bible now. I don't need to worry about anything or know about anything. Or you could be caught sleeping. That's the only problem. Yeah, the war that's for us, it's God's creation versus God's creation. And what I mean by that, so God's creation versus God's creation. God's creation, man, with the Holy Spirit, versus God's creation, which is Lucifer, and his spirit. So it's more a war of the spirits, war of the spirit. And when I talk to mid-trib and post-trib people, they all tend to be like, you're not going anywhere. It's like they're down in a pit already, and you found a rope. So you start climbing it. And then they grab you by the ankles when you're just about up and out. They grab you by the ankles and they say, you're not going anywhere. That's not the truth. You're not supposed to be able to escape. And you know what we do? We just keep climbing. And we kick them off our ankles. And then when we're high enough out of their reach, we'll turn around and say, I can give you a hand up. And they'll say, no, I'm staying in this pit right here. So, okay, well, that's your choice, I was listening to somebody talk about the types and shadows of Jesus Christ and what he did. And you had Job and you had David, Moses, Joshua, and Joseph. Now, I believe, yes, they are types and shadows of what Christ went through. But they all had a lot of sin. Or it's almost as if they were close to being like Christ, but they were there as an example to say you'll never actually be Christ. If you get what I'm saying, you'll never act. Because you had Moses, look, he murdered. You had David, he committed adultery. You had Job, and he in a way complained to the Lord, even though the Lord had blessed him so much. So I found all these people to have been sinners, yet God's trying to tell us that no, they're still redeemable. Now, when we're brought up, learning through school as children, etc., we have a tendency to be taught who's good and who's bad in history, until you do your own research, of course, and you find out sometimes completely the opposite and think, he wasn't such a bad guy, but like, the people telling the story are bad people, or he was a terrible person. He wasn't a good person. In Australia, we have two iconic figures I want to talk about quickly. One of them, his name was Ned Kelly. Okay, now he was famous for being a thief, being a murderer, and for being an outlaw, always on the run. He's a very famous in Australia because of the way he was a thief and an outlaw. The first reason he was in trouble is because he was stealing horses. Now, he was an Irish colonialist. Is that what you say? Colonialist? Well, he was colonial anyway. When the British were setting up the colony here in Australia, a lot of Irish came too, and eventually they got their own land, etc. But he stole horses, or a horse, and they wanted him for that, and he ended up shooting a policeman. Then he was on the run. It was, wanted. That was when a policeman was chasing him through the bush because they were onto him, and he ended up shooting one and killing one. Then he ended up having this armor made for him, like a medieval armor out of iron. It's a very interesting story, and it was like a big face helmet mask thing where you could just see out the eyes, and his chest and his arms were covered all the way down to about his knees, but he forgot to cover his the back of his legs, and that's where the police got him, because he had a big shootout at a place called Glenrowan. And so what happened, he got sent to jail because he was caught, and they took him to this the prison in Victoria, which is in Australia state, and the capital of Victoria is Melbourne. They have this famous jail called Melbourne Jail, and we all got taken there as children to go see where Ned Kelly had to go to jail, and they hung him there. They literally hung him there. There was gallows there. So we got taken to his little tiny jail cell, and they took him up, and they said, "It's your time's up. Any last words before they hang you?" And he said, you know what his famous last words were? "Such is life." And by the way, once they hung him, they had to hang him again. His neck, they had a plaster mold of this guy's head. He had the biggest, thickest neck, like a tree trunk. It was so thick, they had to hang him twice. Anyway, yeah, his last statement, "Such is life." Now, I used to be, Ned Kelly's cool, and what a rebel, what an outlaw. And I thought, no. Now when I think of him, I think, no, he had no remorse for what he had done. He stole off people. Whether or not you like the police, he murdered someone. He stole from people to fulfill his life while he was on the run. And I really can't think of anything, unless you're in that mindset of, sticking it to the man and all that kind of thing. And I think, yeah, not really. If you think about it, he was just stealing and he was on the run. Anyway, he's lauded as this folk hero of Australia. And my point is, I want to go to this next character. Captain Cook, his name, Captain James Cook. Discovered the east coast of Australia for the British Empire. Was a master navigator at sea. Master. He even pioneered techniques on how to, I can't remember the proper name for it, but how to draw maps. People who sailed with him say he was supernaturally skilled. Like, he knew where a tide was before it even hit them, or he knew things that normal men wouldn't know, and surely enough, they would always prove him right. He was brought up in a very strong Christian household. When he went to sea, mind you, it takes 6 months in a straight sail to go from England all the way to Australia. Mind you, you've got to go around the bottom of South America, which is the most treacherous ocean in the world, part of the ocean in the world. I mean, it's scary. He came across all types of islanders and natives, got along with everyone. Okay. They even thought he was the appearing of him on the horizon and his ship was like a fulfillment of their prophecy of I think it was in Hawaii. But anyway, they loved him, thought he was great, treated him like a god, like a king, gave him supplies, everything he needed on his way. So he ended up, he discovered the east coast of Australia. It was amazing, an amazing feat. It was like going into space without a map, without knowing where you're going. So anyway, job well done. Now he has been demonized. He carried this Bible with him on this ship called the Endeavour. Now the Endeavour, mind you, it wasn't even made for long haul sailing. It was some sort of a small cargo ship. Anyway, it was perfect. He became an expert sailor throughout his life. Anyway, he carried this Bible with him. He was a hardcore believer. But through the media, and he is such a demonized character, even like his statue has been destroyed. Now, people could argue with me on that, but for a man that did so much, he ended up getting violently killed by the natives of, I think, Hawaii or Tonga, because there was a misunderstanding. They basically ambushed him on the beach when he had no way to defend himself, and had their way with him. But yeah, the difference between looking at Ned Kelly, the outlaw, the thief, the murderer, and then looking at Captain Cook, James Cook, it just reminds me of when Pontius was saying, "Oh, who do you want us to kill? Who should we set free?" What do they say? Set the criminal free. So I found some comparisons there. And do you have anyone in your history, in your country, of being demonized or being lauded as a hero when you really think about it? Is it true? I've got some little spiritual stories I want to tell. First of all, I haven't talked about dreams for a long time, so I'll talk about, this isn't a dream, it was a waking vision, and I don't know why I had it, but I was half asleep on my couch, but I went to wake up because I wanted to get up and I wanted to do something, but I had this quick vision in my head, and it was a man, I don't know whether he was standing or sitting in front of me, but he kept picking up sand. He was like, you know, you see the characters in Alibaba or something. He was like a Middle Eastern attire, and he had a beard. He looked like someone out of a Bible story, but he kept picking up this sand in front of him, and then letting it sort of run out of his hands, right in my face. And he kept doing it over and over. And he was saying something to me. I don't even remember what he was saying to me, but if it was another language or... But the message I was getting was, each time he picked up the sand and doing that and tipping it back out, it was becoming purer and purer and purer and cleaner. And it was like this man was saying to me, this is you. Each time it's picked up and it's purified again and again and again. And he was basically saying, this is what God's doing to you. And I'm like, wow. It just happened so quickly, but I understood it straight away. I want to tell you about a story I had, an experience with a so-called friend. Somebody I started to sort of go to their house and hang around them, and I don't judge people on their appearance. This guy had dreadlocks, he had sleeve tattoos, he was a bit of an old hippie sort of a guy. Anyway, I just thought he was a bit of a cool guy. I was hanging around him. Anyway, I bought myself a little boat, and he found out, and he goes, oh, he went out and he bought a boat. And of course it was bigger than mine. But then he needed a motor, and a man came around to sell him a motor for this boat. And this was an old guy. And the funny thing is, my friend, he would call himself on the phone in the messages. He would say, Archangel Russ is unable to come to the phone right now. He called himself Archangel Russell. And the old guy had tried to call him and heard that message. And he said to him, Archangel. He said, why do you call yourself Archangel? And he said, oh, it's just a bit of a joke between me and some old friends. And they started calling me the Archangel. I can't even remember why they started calling me the Archangel. But so the guy started talking about how he was a Christian and what an Archangel is. And fascinating conversation. But being a Christian myself, which I don't go around telling everyone, I started talking to him about God and Christ and all that. And, you know, unbeknownst to me, my friend was standing off to the side listening. And after this man had left and we'd finished talking about, you know, what we're talking about, we were back inside, and my friend said to me, he goes, I didn't know you were a Christian. I said, oh, I don't go around telling everyone, I don't need to. And I'll tell you what, I have never seen someone physically change the way my so-called friend changed. As soon as he found out I was a Christian, his attitude toward me went from, hi, how you going, to, what do you want? And he started saying, oh, effing Christians this and effing Christians that. And I'm like, why have you got such a negative, perspective of Christians? And why do you talk about them like that? And he started referring, to Catholic things, saying, oh, they're all paedophiles and all. And I said, well, hang on a second, you're talking about the Catholic Church, really? You're not talking about Christians, you're talking about the Catholic Church. He didn't care. And then he started accusing me of all kinds of things that I had no idea what he's talking about. I'm like, is he serious? I'm like, basically what he was trying to do was get me away from him. Okay. He was in his kitchen. I think he was making something to eat, but he was saying stuff to me, and then he turned around and he looked at me, and he was like, it was like a physical transformation. It was like something was in him. He said something so nasty to me. I can't remember what it was. And my response was basically, oh, is that how you feel? And he was like, he had this look on his face like, yeah, that's how I feel. And I went, oh my God. I said, okay, I said, I'm going now. I went outside, I got on my bike, because I rode there that day, because I was only around the corner, and I never called him again, and I never went back there. I have no need to, like, if anything, I was being more of a friend to him, because it wasn't a two-way street. It was just, he didn't have any friends, and I was just being a friend to him. And I thought, wow, I thought he had something in him that was very repelled by what was in me. But the funny thing was, he didn't sense it until it was mentioned. So there you go. There's a spiritual encounter for you. I was watching a little snippet from, I don't know if any of you know who Joe Rogan is. He's pretty famous, big talk show host. Not talk show, more of a podcast host. And he has very famous people come in. And he had, for the second time, he had Elon Musk come in. Now, Elon Musk, I find, I don't know, is he with them or is he not? Anyway, he was talking, Joe Rogan said, they were talking about microchipping people, and Joe Rogan was saying how distasteful it was, and he wasn't really for it. And then he said, and the Neuralink, and he looked at Elon, who was across the table. He said, and the Neuralink scares the, you know what, out of people. And then Elon went, oh yeah, sort of laughing, and he said, yeah, well, I have been playing that game Cyberpunk. And I did start to get a bit concerned about what I had created. Now, do you know what Cyberpunk is? It's one of the latest video games. And if you look at the game closely, it's literally a city where everyone's got the mark of the beast. They've had it put in them. They're linked to a central database, a central intelligence computer. Basically, if you haven't paid a fine, you can't go anywhere, blah, blah, blah. And he said he looked at that game Cyberpunk and he went, wow, am I really heading in the right direction? And that was like, for him to say that, I was like, wow. For him to acknowledge that was a big deal. Also, another couple of quick notes. There was a major airline who was allowing first class and business class to not wear a MASK. You don't have to wear one if you're in first or business, but if you're in economy, get it on your face. Famous newspaper, The Guardian, had a little story. Children with learning disabilities, or handicapped, or disfigured, or disformed, the way they're born, have a note now on their hospital record, or to the doctors, if anything happens to these people, do not resuscitate. Now, this is all part of that survival of the fittest mentality, isn't it? It's like when Jesus' disciples, they came across the blind man, and they turned to Jesus and they said, what did his parents do wrong? Why is the blind man blind? What sin did they commit, Lord? And Jesus said, they didn't commit any sin. Basically, the blind man is there for a reason. It's like children who are born with Down syndrome. I mean, they have a thing when you're having children. Oh, do you want us to, if it's got Down syndrome, do you want us to kill it first? Or see, because they're looking at things like Down syndrome as a negative. Have you ever spoken to someone with Down syndrome? They're such special people. They're beautiful. They're literally beautiful beautiful human beings. It's like they stay innocent forever. This is that in that same vein, I believe. I mean, it's going to get so much worse. It really, really is. It's going to get a lot worse than what we're seeing now. We're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. So, do not resuscitate. I mean, when I look at the US Senate and all that, and I see all their meetings and their press briefings, and they're trying to cater to a certain message to the public, to the world. They've got those huge MASKs on. Huge. I mean, they look absolutely ridiculous. And I see them, they're trying to make idiots of us. But don't they look like idiots? The way they're trying to pander. They look like complete idiots. Don't you agree? I want you to remember this. What Jesus said. Now, I don't know if any of you think too much about the pyramid with one eye and the surveillance state, the overbearing use of cameras and eyes everywhere. You're always being watched. Remember what Jesus said? I believe he was talking about the future at the same time. He's talking about the people who are running all of this. Now, listen to this and tell me if you agree. I came into this world to give sight to the blind and to take sight from those who can see. Now, if it's not in the exact wording, just forgive me. But do you agree? And this one, when they asked if we, the Pharisees, were blind, and Jesus replied, if you were blind, you would be without sin. But since you say we see, your sin remains. Don't you find that is a direct, not only a threat, a promise to the big I? Where did David hit Goliath? With a stone. Pow! And it was so far in it sunk into his forehead. Enough to make anyone blind. So with that, take care of yourselves. Don't get down on yourself. Just remember, if they take it all away from you today, everything you have, everything, you still have God. And God still has you. He's made his promise to you. He's the only one to keep a promise that I know. Alright, take care of yourselves, guys. I will talk to you again shortly. It's been great having you back, and I will see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye.